On a column of star coral, Christmas worms look like flowers blooming as they catch particles of food in the current.
I have a view that if the Brits can't cook on the ground, they haven't got much chance at 35,000 feet. Yeah. And in this context, I don't think the Americans are any better cooks than the Brits.
Food's lovely and just enjoying ourselves in the pool.
No, it's a beautiful place. What more can you want? Sun, girls, beautiful hotel, drinks.
Hello, I'm Joe Abrell. There is a coral reef in the Florida Keys called Looe Key. It's presently a battleground in a civil war that's been raging for several years between local environmentalists and resident fishermen. Both sides claim they want to protect the reef, but they don't trust each other's methods. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration came up with a possible solution by proposing Looe Key as a national marine sanctuary. While most environmentalists favor the sanctuary proposal instead of the status quo, which they claim is unfairly controlled by fishermen.
This is Nancy Solomon. Looe Key is a coral reef 10 miles off Big Pine Key. Many marine biologists call Looe Key the most impressive and beautiful reef in the Florida Reef Tract. Scientists as well as sports divers enjoy looking at different coral formations concentrated in a few square miles. At the heart of the reef are hard corals like this mound of brain coral. It needs a constant flow of clear, warm water to live. If this rust-colored fire coral looks hot in the dancing sunlight of the shallows, it is. It'll burn your skin if you touch it. Various hard corals grow together to form walls and canyons up to 20 feet high. Since they grow only millimeters a year, they might have started growing at the time of Christ, about 2,000 years ago. On a column of star coral, Christmas worms look like flowers blooming as they catch particles of food in the current. Sea fans always orient themselves sideways to the current, filtering nutrients while they wave back and forth, as if inviting us to a world uniquely beautiful.
Those are the reasons why it's so special. It's also, of course, the shallowest of the major formations and the most accessible to the average family American. And this is, after all, in federal waters. It's the property of all Americans. And this is one of the easiest places for an average family doggy paddle snorkeler to come out and see. That's one of the neat things about it.
Ed Davidson, a dive boat captain and civic leader, is all for the enjoyment of Looe Key and the establishment of a national marine sanctuary by the Office of Coastal Zone Management. Presently, Looe Key is managed by the South Atlantic and Gulf of Mexico Fishery Management Councils. These councils, says Davidson, are dominated by commercial fishermen. And he says that's not fair, since he estimates commercial fishermen generate only 10% of marine resource revenues in the state of Florida, compared with the revenues produced by recreational and sport diving industries.
So they're a minority user group, and they have a disproportionate hold on the regulation and allocation of resources, and that needs to be changed in the public interest.
Fishermen claim the sanctuary will rob them of their livelihoods by cutting into their profits. Davidson points to the written proposal for the sanctuary and says this is proof fishing in the area will hardly be affected.
Of course, none of our proposals significantly affect the reality of commercial fishing activity in this area. Lots of the claims of effect are wildly exaggerated.
Davidson claims both existing fishing laws and the dangerous shallows of the reef preclude use by the fishermen anyway. He says the fishermen are only interested in how many fish they can catch today, never mind conservation for the future.
We discuss all of those things, but the decisions most often follow the interests of the commercial harvesting, commercial fisheries, and do not, sadly enough, often take a look at the long-run ramifications. The councils are improving slightly in that, but we need a wholesale improvement to reflect the fact that we have managed to overfish most of our historical fisheries and damage the base stocks. We've done that over and over again.
Al Armitt, vice president of Organized Fishermen of Florida, says his members know not to overfish. That would eventually put them out of business. His greatest fear, though, is that rules of the marine sanctuary might change once the program is instituted.
This is something we don't know, and it's one thing we're fearful of. Whereas with the fisheries management councils, you have by law, you've got public hearings and, you know, review of the different proposals that would be brought in as management measures at a later date. So you'd always know where you were at with the councils and have options to try to work on things, where the sanctuaries program you might not.
Fishermen in Florida say they've learned to be wary of politics and promises. When the Everglades National Park was founded in the 40s, they were promised their fishing rights would not be taken away. But the Park Service has said it will boot them out of the Everglades in 1985. The Bahamian government has boxed them in on the east with strict fishing laws enforced with gunboats. Now fishermen fear the sanctuary is a possible first step towards restrictions at their own front door.
They're worried about foot in the door, they're worried about government regulation, they're worried that the rules will change sometime later, and never mind all the public process that's necessarily involved. That's what it's really all about. We never proposed in the beginning or now to significantly restrict any real, actual, viable commercial fishing activity here. We never proposed that. Divers are giving up things. We're giving up tropical specimen collecting. We're giving up spearfishing. The commercial fishermen aren't to give up anything significant here at all in the first place.
You know, I'd like to say that I don't mistrust all government programs by any means, but I think in the case of the sanctuaries program, the safeguards there, as far as protecting the resource for all user groups, may not be sufficient. And I really think that in that regard, that the proposal would be scary to people that, you know, are within different user groups, whether it be commercial fishermen or what have you. Whereas probably the councils, you know, I feel do a better job.
Bill Becker is assistant director of the Newfound Harbor Institute, and like many other citizens we've spoken to, says he's sure of one thing: the worst enemy of the reef is people. He's glad the sanctuary proposal provides for public education to help protect the reef. He teaches us that anchoring on sand and personally checking its position is the first thing to do upon arrival. He then gives producer-cinematographer Glenn Kirkpatrick a guided tour of evidence of abuses on the reef. A nearby dive boat has carelessly thrown its anchor onto a reef finger. The delicate coral is damaged by both the anchor itself and the chafing action of its heavy chain. Nearby, a specimen of brain coral wears the scars of coral hunters who've chopped out the top of the 1,000-pound mound that took scores of years to grow. It will never regain its rounded shape. It might even die from this gaping wound. Becker, as well as the other divers, explains that spearfishing has killed most of the large fish on the reef. He thinks fishing of any kind should be banned to make Looe Key a complete sanctuary.
Why not completely eliminate any taking of any organisms from the area? We have a chance here to form a completely natural sanctuary, an area that would be untouched by man except for observation. You anchor your boat and look, and that's it. I think that it is unfair for spearfishing to be banned, yet allow hook and line fishing and commercial fishing.
Becker thinks the area of the proposed sanctuary should be reduced from 5 square nautical miles to 1 square nautical mile. He says the larger area would be too difficult to patrol and is unnecessary for protecting the reef. Ed Davidson and others disagree.
So the 1 square mile proposal was made at the behest of the commercial fisheries interests as a counter proposal. What it does, and what it does unjustifiably, is it amputates the very heart out of this ecosystem and gives only that protection.
Davidson says the core of the reef, the 1 square mile, shouldn't be the only area protected. The overall area containing the 5 square miles should go as one package. Bill Becker, as well as the fishermen, believe the main damage is done in the 1 square mile area, so only this needs protection.
Well, there probably is an interchange, but the fact that there's no pressure on the animals outside of that 1 square mile area. There's fishing pressure, but that is fishing pressure that's evenly distributed throughout the reef area. But it's the pressure from the people, the anchor damage, the collecting, the incidental damage that visitors do. It's nothing malicious, I'm sure, but it's just a matter of people going out there and people enjoying the reef, but the fact that people do damage to the reef.
The damage inflicted by visitors worries everyone. Citizens in the area are afraid that publicity connected with the sanctuary will bring even more people and destruction to Looe Key.
I think you'd see, anytime you get national notoriety for something, whether it be a sanctuary or a national park or whatever, immediately, you know, it's advertised all over the country. It's listed in the Federal Register. It goes into newspapers, on television. People that probably never heard of Looe Key would, for maybe no other reason other than just curiosity, would want to come see it.
The marine life on Looe Key can take care of itself up to a point, but it has no defense against man's destruction. The problem of protecting Looe Key lies with human beings. People can destroy the reef or people can save it, but it takes people to decide its fate.
Public hearings on the proposed Looe Key Sanctuary will be held this Tuesday night at 7 o'clock at the University of Miami's Rosenstiel School on Rickenbacker Causeway. 2 more hearings will be held this Wednesday. The first will be at 1 p.m. at Key West High School and the other at 7 p.m. at the Big Pine Key Youth Center. That's this Wednesday. Montage will return with the British invasion right after this. Sir Freddie Laker of Laker Airways had a very simple and seemingly truly American type idea: to provide the most economical fare possible for people to fly between this country and England. Well, it took him 6 years of battling the American government, the British government, and the American airline industry to pull it off. But finally, in 1977, he won his right to exercise what in this country we supposedly stand for: competition on the open market. When he finally did start to compete, he revolutionized the entire industry, brought airfares down drastically, and probably changed the whole concept of air travel forever. So when he was here recently, I asked him just exactly how he was able to bring all that off.
That was the lucky bit, probably. Well, I've been in the airplane business for a long time.
Yeah.
I started on my 16th birthday in 1938, so I'm giving my age away right away. And I've been owning and operating airplanes since 1946. And I decided in 1946, at the end of the war, that I wanted to earn a living flying airplanes. And the government, the socialist government of the day, if you remember after Churchill,
Sure.
we had a landslide towards socialism. And the socialist government of the day said, we're going to nationalize air transport, and no one else can fly except the national airline. And I wanted to fly. So from that moment on, there was a conflict of interest between His Majesty's government and Freddie Laker. I had to find a way to earn a living doing what I wanted to do. So it was a constant battle of wits to try and find a way around the Civil Aviation Act of the day to allow me to fly. And of course, I wasn't alone. Although the law said there shouldn't be any more airlines other than British Airways, or it wasn't called British Airways in those days, there were in fact 109 small companies,
Oh, really?
all trying to fly airplanes. So we had to develop things. We developed the European package holiday that we have brought to America in 1980.
Well, now, you know, there may be people watching now who still don't know who you are or what in the world you do for a living. So essentially you made travel to Europe. With New York to London was the first domestic American
It was the
excursion,
first
right?
scheduled service,
Okay.
but I had been operating charters under the old affinity group rules, you know, the sort of the Left-Hand Club and the Rose Growers Club and all sorts of phony names to get people across the Atlantic cheaply. I've been doing that for many years.
All right, what's the demonstration of how much money you saved the traveler overnight when you were able to fly into New York and book passengers?
Well, when we were able to get our SkyTrain service going, which was originally a walk-on, walk-off service, same-day reservation, the immediate effect of being able to buy an instant ticket was a 65% reduction in the fare. That was the immediate effect. Yeah. But since then, we have developed the service into a walk-on type service. We have an advanced purchase, and we have ordinary economy and cargo as well.
Now, are you doing something that the American Airlines are not doing something that the American Airlines have to do? Are your planes not as safe? Is your service I mean, what's the difference?
Sir, I fly the world's safest airplane, and so do 43 other international
Well, now one would
airlines,
question the
DC-10.
Well, now you know there's a great fear in the public of the DC-10.
Well, I don't know why there is, because as I say, I've been in the aeroplane business since I was 16 years of age. I'm being a little boastful now, in as much that I am a qualified engineer. I have been a qualified pilot, and I think I know a little bit about aeroplanes, in as much that together with the bankers, I own about $600 or $700 million worth of aeroplanes. So I think I ought to know something about aeroplanes. The DC-10 is the only airliner ever that was recertified after being in service for 7 years. And at the end of 7 years, it met the same criteria of safety as it did the very day it first flew. No other airliner has ever been put through a technical re-evaluation as to its integrity like the DC-10. And I can tell you that my DC-10s have had no modifications done to them whatsoever. In fact, the modifications required on the American-operated DC-10s have been on my aeroplanes since 1972. So I say it has to be the world's safest airplane.
Now, you started out in New York, as I recall, just with no reservations. You went to the airport and you waited till there was a seat and you got on and you went to
That's right, that was in 1977.
And that was quite a madhouse, I remember, when that opened. But,
well, in England we it developed in what is now affectionately known as Lakerville, Eccleston Square. The passengers camped out in tents in Eccleston Square, but that doesn't happen now. That's all a thing of the past. Everyone gets a seat now. Everyone gets a ticket.
So you can plan ahead.
Oh, yes.
I mean, I ought to be charging you rates for this commercial we're doing for Laker Airways, but my question is, who in the world would not fly Laker Airways if you can do it for perhaps a third or half the cost, and you can make reservations, and your airplanes are safe, and I presume you serve food and beverage on
Yes, and we have the cinemas, and we have...
What you pay extra for?
12 super... Well, not on every ticket. On the economy you don't pay extra for the food, or the advance purchase. It's only on our standard SkyTrain where, you know, this is private enterprise. This is democracy. Why should a passenger pay for a meal that he doesn't want? Why should a passenger have whiskey poured in his ear all the way to London because it's called first class? We say, give the passenger a price service option. Let him do what he wants to do, not what I want him to do. He's going on holiday or on business. Let him sit where he wants to in the airplane. Let him see the film if he wants to. Let him eat if he wants to. And if he wants to pour whiskey in his own ear, he can do that as well.
He can buy
Whereas the other people enforce it upon them. But of course, all of these things cost money, and the passenger doesn't realize it.
Well, now the airlines would say they have done these things through the years because passengers wanted it and requested it, so they made it easy. Now you're saying that's not true?
Well, I haven't ever known a passenger that asked for the price of the booze to be included in the fare, and I haven't ever known of a passenger to say, I want plastic sandwiches because this is what I mean, I'm talking against myself, and my own staff say to me, you know, you shouldn't talk about airline food. But I have a view that if the Brits can't cook on the ground, they haven't got much chance at 35,000 feet. And in this context, I don't think the Americans are any better cooks than the Brits.
Let me ask you, why did the Queen knight you? What was her reason?
Well, it was very interesting because it was actually recommended. You know, these awards and decorations are recommended by various bodies, and of course the Prime Minister recommends to the Queen. And I took the socialist government of Mr. Callaghan to court twice and won. And of course the socialists were totally opposed to this type of free enterprise in competition with their airline. And I think it shows a great depth of character of British politicians, inasmuch that the socialist Prime Minister that I'd beaten in the court actually recommended the knighthood or the award to the Queen for services to civil aviation. I like to think that it was not only for the SkyTrain concept. I like to think it was for a team that has spent 30 years defeating government.
Sir Freddie predicts he'll bring 300,000 tourists to Florida alone this year. But we've been hearing rumors that they're not happy with their stays here. So we decided to find out for ourselves just exactly how the British tourists are finding South Florida. Here's reporter Jerry Penacoli.
Oh, I like it very much. I think it's fabulous. So far, everything has been beautiful. Yes, very much so, yeah. Everyone's very friendly, especially the staff.
Oh, it's beautiful. Florida, down at the Keys and the Lagos, scuba diving. Having a real hard time, working hard.
Yes, we're having a great time.
Yeah, lovely.
Especially the weather, because we don't get much of this in England. Super. The Americans, you know, they speak so nice to us and that. You know, we're really at home here. We really love it, you know.
Who would complain sipping a tall, cool drink while sitting next to the pool at the Fontainebleau Hilton? But we found that most British tourists, even after waiting hours for their flight home, still say they enjoyed their vacation.
Very nice. Good people, social, and looked after. Whatever you wanted, they give you.
Well, we stayed in 3 different hotels and all of them have been fine and we've never had no problems.
There's plenty to see if you've got a car. And in fact, you must have a car because buses are not very good. But Miami, I went to Disneyland. Now that was very interesting. It was beautiful. It was very educational, good for the kids and also for the parents. More parents than kids, I think, really.
At both the airport and on the beach, only a few British tourists had any complaints whatsoever. One was irritated with the lack of public transportation that forced him to rent a car. Another Englishman was simply frustrated after landing at Miami International Airport.
Oh, customs, yeah. Yeah. If you sort out the customs and immigration, I can get in less than 4 hours, then I'd be very pleased, yeah.
And of course, any vacationer wants to get what he pays for.
The only thing is that the beer and the places like this, they rip you off a bit. But yeah, in general, I think it's you know, we've got a lot of entertainment for our money. It's cheaper than most places in Europe now.
Price-wise, I'd say it's one of the best. You know, and the dollar-pound relationship is very good. It's a fantastic place for English people to come right at this moment in time.
All of the British tourists we spoke with seem to have had a great vacation, but will they come back?
Oh, without doubt, yes, sure. Certainly come here again, that's for sure.
This is my 4th visit so far, so obviously I would come back. Well, I've never had I've always got on well with the Americans. They seem to welcome English people a lot. I've never had anybody sort of come up to me, oh, you're English, go away. They've always been terribly friendly.
Yeah, it was wonderful. No, we've had a lovely time. The children have had a lovely time as well. We've had no problems. We arrived here the day of the riots. It was miles away, so there was no problem at all.
Would you come back?
Yes, it's our 3rd visit, so that's quite a good ad for Florida, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I think so, yeah. Providing I can get into using the sun properly.
Yes, definitely come back.
Having a great time. The food's lovely and just enjoying ourselves in the pool.
No, it's a beautiful place. What more can you want? Sun, girls, beautiful hotel, drinks. What more can you want?
Would you come back?
I'm staying. I'm not going back.
We have an update on our continuing story of DMSO, the chemical compound some are hailing as a wonder drug for pain, particularly arthritis. The Florida legislature has just passed a law allowing the manufacture and sale of DMSO within the state. Now, prior to this, Florida has been one of only 2 states where DMSO is legal to use, but not to manufacture or sell. Well, we hope that with this new law, which takes effect October 1st, DMSO, which has been commanding unaffordably high prices, will become an inexpensive alternate painkiller. That's our montage for this week. I'm Joe Abrell.